Hello everyone, my name is Evan, and during this video today we'll be making the new Godzilla Evo skeleton, I do say. And as I craft away, we'll be learning about this new, well, pink Godzilla, you could say? During this video today, I'll be sculpting away, making the new Godzilla design, you could say. And as I sculpt away at the skeleton today, we'll be talking about the new Empire, I do say, or Godzilla from Godzilla X Kong, you might say. So let's get this deep dive underway. Be sure to smash that like button as hard as a kaiju, comment below what you think of the project, and if you are new here and enjoy this type of content, be sure to subscribe if you're new, because I do deep dives in all the things I make, including monsters and dinosaurs. The new Empire trailer has given us our first look at Godzilla Evo, and he looks different? Now, I personally really like it. It seems to be homaging Godzilla 2000, which happens to be one of my favorite Goji films and designs, so that obviously makes me, well, happy. However, the design hasn't gone over super well in the community. Plenty have stated their disappointment that this might be the way Godzilla looks from now on. It's recently been discovered in Monarch Legacy of Monsters that Godzilla evolves using nuclear energy. But no one knew what this new Godzilla was going to be up until the new trailers recently. But now that the trailers have finally been released, we can get a closer look at this new design, and whether or not this will be Godzilla's most powerful form yet. So let's get into this deep dive. For those that were patrolling the internet weeks prior to the trailer's release, you probably saw some of the toy releases, which were not good first impressions. To sum it up, basically Godzilla was seen with a light blue skin color, with a brown armored chest and red dorsal plates, and most notably, a very snatched waist. And when I first saw this, I was like, oh no, what have you done to him? In all honesty, I think what the would have been more appropriate, but you get the point. Because personally, I really kind of like the chubby, bulky, hippopotamus muscular look of the old Godzilla, because that felt like something that would actually really exist at the bottom of the ocean. It was arguably anatomically the most realistic Godzilla has actually ever looked. Other than my opinion, perhaps Zilla, but we won't go there because I know how Godzilla fans feel about that guy. The point at hand is legendary Godzilla at this point, so we'll stay focused on him. Then in King of the Monsters, they changed his look a little bit more, and I liked it a little less, to be honest. I personally preferred those jagged dorsal plates a little bit more, and the sauropod-like feet. But overall, it still looked like legendary Godzilla. But now going to this new look, it is super different. And I think for a lot of the toy models, it boiled down to that waist. Where are his organs? In the previous designs, it looked like he was muscular and built where if he was punched in the stomach, he wouldn't be able to feel anything. But now his waist looks like it wouldn't be able to hold up the top half of his body. Not to mention how long his arms are, which are extremely long now. They've practically given him human proportions. But I would have to say its saving grace were those red dorsal plates. Obviously, Godzilla's been red in the past, so I thought this was a nice homage to Burning Godzilla possibly, and his red spiral ray. And I actually really like how sharp and jagged those dorsal plates look. That actually reminds me more of a combination of Godzilla 2000 and the 2014 design dorsal plates. So obviously that gets a big thumbs up from me. So of course I was glad to see they were doing more of an angular design here. But because it's a Playmates figure we're talking about here, the proportions aren't going to be super accurate. They're on the side of the cheap Monsterverse figure range, so they aren't going to be the best looking. So I think a lot of people gave it the benefit of the doubt and waited for official images. So that left the question, how does it translate to film? And thankfully, it looks a lot better. He was first seen through a merch design launch through Legendary's website, and his proportions looked far more menacing. I really like his skin color. It's a lot more darker and more that traditional, like, charcoal black almost, which contrasts very well with his lighter dorsal plates. I honestly really like the head design, although making all those spikes was a bit of a nightmare, but I'm definitely digging the sharp and spiky look that they're going for. He definitely looks a lot less huggable now. Now, I don't think there's gonna be any more complaints that he looks fat, because if anything, he's malnourished at this point. However, the waist does contrast to film a lot better than it does on the toys. He is definitely a lot more hunched over than normal, so I definitely feel like they are acknowledging that he is a little bit top heavy at this point. It definitely gives him more of the impression of a bull now. So during this film, I think we're gonna see a lot of scenes where he's basically just charging full head-on into the enemy. Since this is meant to be a all-new powerful form for Godzilla, I am 100% sure that we're gonna get some new powers here. One of which I'm assuming is an atomic tail whip. I'm saying that because Godzilla now has thegomizers. And yes, just like a stegosaurus, for those of you who may be unaware, a thegomizer is referred to the spiky ends on the tail on a stegosaurus. It actually derived from an old comic book, and apparently some paleontologists found it was funny, so they basically adapted it into an actual scientific term. Either way, this is really cool for Godzilla because since the 1954 original, scientists have stated Godzilla is like a combination between a T.Rex and a stegosaurus, and probably a lesser known fact, his arms are actually inspired by an iguanodon. You can actually see on the Playmates figure that some of his dorsal plates split off into sharp spikes on the end of his tail. So I can definitely see these things glowing with atomic energy and becoming a deadly melee attack. And well, who knows, he also might be like Shin Godzilla and be able to shoot atomic blasts from the end of his tail. Now, obviously the biggest thing that stands out in comparison to, well, the film Godzilla and the toy Godzilla, his dorsal plates definitely are not red. They're just full-on pink, or magenta technically. Now, personally, I really do not have an issue with this. I think it looks cool. And if we get a scene with him glowing in a dark cavern, well, I think that would be visually incredible. I think Adam Wingard's really diving into that neon 80s aesthetic here. But I've also seen a lot of people that also have a lot of issues with it, unfortunately. Which is kind of interesting, because I personally probably would have preferred the red dorsal plates. That was seen in the figures, but in all honesty, I think a lot of people probably would have. But I don't really have any issues with the way it looks in the film. Although some people have gotten really angry over the color, because, you know, red is cool and pink is for girls. And personally, all I really have to say to that is, well, I kind of see you people as being somewhat like this guy. Worst Godzilla ever. And in all honesty, I just think that's dumb. Really dumb. It's Godzilla. Just because he's got slightly pink dorsal plates does not mean he's turning into a woman. Now, maybe for me, the reason I think I like the color so much is because it kind of looks like Godzilla ate a needler. And honestly, the spikes even kind of have the same shape. And obviously, color contrast. And honestly, the overall sharpness of them looks like they could be a weapon on their own. Like, I could imagine him jumping into the enemy and basically just kind of turning his back into them, which actually might be not that far from the truth because we actually see Godzilla has elbow spikes now, which I made earlier. And they almost look exactly the same as the dorsal plates from his back. So I think that kind of hints at that he's going to start actually using them as melee weapons. Not to mention the fact that this will probably make his dorsal slice attack far more, well, destructive. Overall, I think it's really cool, and I personally really like this new design. And in all honesty, I'm thinking about picking up the SH Monster Arts figure of this, so that might be popping up on my YouTube channel soon. Some other complaints people have had about it is, well, the extremely long arms and the kind of skinny legs. Now, personally, I'm kind of happy about this because it's gonna make my life as a stop motion animator a lot easier with these longer arms. I'll be able to basically do far more motions and capabilities with them. Not to mention the fact that I've recently come up with a new shoulders design during this video, obviously. And about those, well, massive tree trunks for legs, I am gonna kind of miss those, but again, it's gonna make my life for this doll in particular a lot easier to animate because the legs will be far more flexible in comparison to some of my other ones that have, well, big tree trunks. So be it as it may, some people kind of dislike those features. It's, well, some bonus points for me personally. Now, I think the big argument there is his arms were never really exactly the best for melee attacks, which kind of separated him from King Kong, obviously. So I think that's probably where a lot of those complaints are deriving from, which I get it, but at the same time too, he's gonna be far more capable, and personally I think it's gonna be a lot cooler to see him be able to do more melee attacks, not to mention his, you know, other possible new powers that could be coming soon. So I'm definitely looking forward to this film. And it probably should be mentioned, even though it's extremely obvious in my opinion, this is a more evolved form of Godzilla, so it does kind of make more sense that his weak points would be a little bit more addressed. Either way, I think it's one of those things we're gonna have to wait till the film comes out to figure out how he really handles combat with this new form. All that we can really tell so far that he is going to be the most vicious and brutal Godzilla ever yet. And in my humble and honest opinion, it is definitely not the worst design ever. Either way, that concludes all the fun facts on the new pink Godzilla, so now it's time for the build rundown. So on this legendary Godzilla project today, we've built the skeleton, you could say, which will serve as our armature frame or the armature doll skeleton. The materials used during this project today are aluminum wire, you could say. I definitely used a lot thicker gauge. I believe it's like probably up to 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters thick at this point, definitely upscaled that because my projects have definitely gotten a lot bigger, and unfortunately that has become a problem with some of them with the wire being a little bit too thin. But I also did use the thin gauge wire to basically add a little bit more bone structure, and the bones are basically made out of oven-baked clay, as well as the spikes, I do say. Except I used a different color for the face there just to give it, well, a little bit more of a chance when I start painting things over to not really show through if things start getting, well, a little bit flaky. Also some tinfoil to help keep the weight down and, well, save us a lot on clay, and a little bit of plasticine clay to help everything just kind of, well, stay in place. And I used Lego ball joints for the shoulders and hips. Now, be sure to tune in next week where we'll be painting the skeleton, I do say, as well as adding the crane. Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion nerdy things, and during this video today we'll be continuing our Godzilla Evo project, I do say, and continuing our deep dive on this monster, one could say. On the Evo Godzilla Project Part 2 today, we'll be finishing off the painting, I do say, and once that's all done, we can have some plasticine sculpting fun. And while I make this monster today, we'll be continuing our deep dive, you could say, on this new pink Godzilla, I do say. And if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a kaiju, as I like to say. And if you're new here, you better hit that subscribe button, I do say, or Godzilla will stomp on your house, one could say. Be sure to comment below what you think of the project and share with your monster-loving friends. So during this episode today, I'll give you some possible reasons why the G-Man has changed colors in the new film Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. And I'll also provide a breakdown of what Godzilla will be capable of in this new form. To begin, let's address the elephant in the room. Why pink? For those that don't know, we have seen Godzilla before in a similar color palette. Going back to 1999 and 2000, Godzilla was featured with spiky dorsals and a purplish pink hue. Additionally, this version featured spikier skin as well as jagged, sharp dorsal plates. These subtle and purple-pink hues can also be seen if we go back in time to 1994, where Space Godzilla can be seen with similar hues on his crystal shoulders. Now, almost 30 years later, Godzilla will revisit this color palette in Godzilla x Kong. But this isn't exactly why the G-Man has turned pink. Now, I should probably state the material in this episode is just speculation, and should not be considered canon to the Monsterverse, unless proven true after the film's release. The best clues, in my opinion, are that why Godzilla has turned pink. You can see all sorts of pink hues and purple ones embedded in the ice where Godzilla happens to be taking a nap, where he's evolving into his more powerful form. As for IGN's article released before the trailer, this pink coloration, or better described as magenta, or also known as magenta-hued energy, is not something newly introduced to this film. There are a vast amount of pink-colored crystals in the Hollow Earth caves, and we are introduced to plenty of pink-colored crystal structures in the trailer. But if we go back in time to the events of Godzilla vs. Kong, you'll notice some interesting details. In a particular scene where Nathan Lin and company breached the Hollow Earth's veil, leading into the Vile Vortex, we witnessed all sorts of colorations appear on the windshield of the heaves. These were most likely some visual, magnetic, or energetic currents that will quickly bypass the Hollow Earth exploration craft. This phenomenon also occurred in Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. And of course, what we see there is more pink, especially during the fight between the Ion Dragon and Godzilla, indicating that this coloration, along with that blue color signature, could be one of the several energy forms found down in the Hollow Earth. Bear in mind, this is science fiction, so not all science will be accurately interpreted. However, an interesting takeaway from all of this, that the color hues and signatures seen so far, displayed by Hollow Earth phenomenon, closely resemble aurora borealis, also known as auroras. What are these? These are light displays that happen as a result of the disturbance of the Earth's magnetosphere, caused by solar winds, which just so happens to be highly radioactive. And one of the colors seen in Aurora's spectrum just so happens to be pink, in addition to a few shades of blue, yellow, and orange, all of which in fact we have seen in legendary Godzilla. Some colors such as light green are also reflected in some of the Hollow Earth's crystals. So how does this all tie in together? Godzilla could be simply just absorbing one of these forms of energy that has already existed in the Hollow Earth, one of which presumes to be a more powerful energy source. As a result, Godzilla's dorsal plates that are responsible for expelling and storing this energy will now reflect this pink hue. And not only that, something that always matches those dorsal plates is his atomic blast, which, you guessed it, just so happens to be pink. Note, we haven't seen how this atomic breath attack reacts upon impact. but it's likely it'll produce a different type of destructive power. Is it hotter than the blue? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. Note that blue-colored flames are among the hottest, if not the hottest flames out there. Magenta or pink doesn't exactly show up on the heat spectrum. But looking at the RBG color spectrum, we find that this color is a combination of red and blue. The hottest and the least hottest of these, making this new atomic blast a bit of a mystery, and definitely up for grabs in this cinematic universe. So it may or may not be more powerful than Godzilla's blue atomic breath. Now, back to the pink. We don't find this color exclusively just in crystals and in Godzilla's back there, but in the ice formation it seems to be taking some different form of energy. Taking on a more organic appearance, for lack of a better description, kind of looks like veins that appear to be serving as conduits for this energy. Yeah, I'm probably assuming this stuff is some very, very strange form of energy that humanity doesn't understand, which is probably a good thing because it's probably better off in the hands of massive titans than, well, unfortunately us. Which brings up the question, is Godzilla wielding the only form of this new energy? Well, my best guess is probably not, and here's why. Now that we have a basic understanding as to, well, the reasons why Godzilla possibly has turned pink now, it's time to start thinking of the purpose behind this evolution. Note that it said that this more powerful form is a result of something that happened before this evolved state. That's right, something or someone caused Godzilla to go take a nap and evolve. Perhaps by someone or something that also wants this power. It's common knowledge now that Scar King is not the only massive titan in this movie. And this new titan just so happens to be a giant ice titan called Shimu, which I personally find very interesting because, well, I'm Canadian, eh? And I personally think it's probably going to be the main antagonist for the movie, considering this is something that Godzilla and King Kong have never exactly faced before. And quick fun fact, Shimu was first hinted at in Godzilla vs. Kong Call of Duty in a cave painting. And in all honesty, I definitely wouldn't mind making a Shimu, however, I haven't gotten any requests for him, so I won't betray the point system any more than I already have. However, I do have a large stockpile of white plaster scenes, so yeah, dear viewers, hint hint nudge nudge, comment Shimu in the comments below. Anyway, Shimu was possibly wielding an energy form that was able to surpass Godzilla, well, forcing him to evolve, is kind of my theory and probably how he's ended up frozen in ice. If this is the case, then Godzilla is basically evolving and becoming more powerful out of necessity. Now, this new energy that we have been introduced to has done a lot more to Godzilla than just make him turn pink. It definitely came with a few more interesting side effects. That's right, legendary Godzilla has seemed to have woken up with a few relative upgrades. Godzilla now seems to be a lot leaner, especially from the abdominal era and thighs, the advantages of which are the following. Less weight to move around, so Godzilla can now move even faster than before. Given that these new, less heavy appendages give Godzilla a little bit more maneuverability and is able to take larger strides. The disadvantages of being leaner is a possibility of being lightweight. This weight disadvantage would be more offset if Godzilla grew much taller, but this doesn't seem to be exactly the case. However, the one indisputable upgrade is the, well, presence of longer and stronger arms. Godzilla's never been bad at using his forearms for combat. In fact, he's actually pretty good. But now, in this film, not only will he have better reach, but also be able to use them as an extra point of stability. Longer arms such as these would definitely allow him to be more quadrupedal if necessary, while also allowing him to stand up faster, crawl, or even possibly climb. I definitely think Godzilla is going to be a far more fierce combatant with this new design. And this was probably arguably almost necessary for Godzilla, since most likely Scar King and his adversary will most likely be very strong and agile combatants. And I should probably also state that, well, it might be a little bit more of an advantage to be a little quicker and leaner than your adversary who is quite large, such as Shimu. But that's not all. Godzilla has one more evolutionary advantage because of his nap. For one, he's definitely got a lot more thorny and spiky skin. Additionally, another spiky upgrade seems to be on his tail. If Godzilla's tail wasn't already OP, this tail is now armed with thagomizers, a total of 4 to 6 dorsal plates that appear on the end of his tail. Now, we've seen what a supercharged dorsal can do, so just imagine what these spikes will be capable of on the end of Godzilla's tail. Death is at the end of this whip. Now it's time for the build rundown. So during this project today, the materials used, I do say, were some plasticine clay as well as some oven baked clay, and I used some, well, armature wire to kind of help poke those things into place, you could say. Now, obviously, there was quite a bit of painting today, which honestly I didn't really want to do at the beginning because, yeah, it's usually a big time sink and doesn't really necessarily make the best footage, so I'm kind of behind schedule on that fact, sadly, and plus there was a lot of dry brushing that I probably shouldn't have done. But at the same time too, I wasn't necessarily sure where I wanted to go with this project yet because my reference photos weren't exactly the greatest because, well, this guy's kind of new. But in the end, I decided to just go all out pink because how else are you really gonna know that this is, well, Godzilla from Godzilla X Kong, in my opinion. And there was also quite a bit of clear coat, well, just to kind of help protect all that dry brushing and other painting from flaking off because, well, there's hours and hours that went into that. I probably spent about 2 days painting, I think. And that concludes part 2 of this project, so be sure to tune in next week where I'm hoping to have this thing all finished. Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion monsters and dinosaurs, and during this video today, we'll be finishing off my Godzilla X Kong project, you could say. What will be taking place in this video today is a lot of sculpting, you could say. We'll be adding pounds of plasticine clay to finish off this Godzilla, I do say. I think it's safe to say this Godzilla is about 6 pounds of clay, making him the biggest G-Man in my collection to this day. And while I craft away, we'll be talking about Godzilla's new fighting capabilities, I do say. So, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. This monstrous titan has evolved several times throughout the Monsterverse, as well as in a variety of other franchises. As far as the Monsterverse version of Godzilla goes, we see him at his smallest in Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Set back in the date of 1954, we get a good look at him before he gets bombed by Castle Bravo. The nuclear bomb set off in Bikini Atoll. Godzilla started off with jagged rock-like dorsal plates, stubby yet chunky sauropod-like feet with a bulky build. Then we saw him fight the Mutos in San Francisco, utilizing his atomic breath to gain the upper hand, before, well, executing the kiss of death, decapitating the female. Then swam back to the ocean to rest. He would go on to evolve substantially after defeating the Muto Prime with his nuclear pulse, which meant he had to regrow his dorsal plates, giving us the new, more rounded fins that we see in Godzilla King of the Monsters as well as Godzilla vs. Kong, appearing more muscular and even larger than before. This Godzilla was even more powerful than his previous form. We witness his deadly thermal nuclear pulse that was powerful enough to wipe King Ghidorah off the map. And now going into Godzilla X Kong the New Empire, this monster is set to evolve once again, possibly into his most powerful form yet, transforming into a bigger and meaner design to combat Scar King as well as Shimu, who happens to be known as the First Titan. This form is set to be the most baddest and powerful iteration of the King of the Monsters the world has ever seen, appearing even larger and heavier with barbed dorsal plates and superheated magenta radiation coursing through his veins. We have caught a brief glimpse of his new atomic breath, but what other powers could this Godzilla possess? So now, let's explore Evolved Goji's powerful new capabilities. So first, let's talk about that new skull. With new reinforced armor, Godzilla can now take even more heavier hits than before, which would have previously disorientated him, as seen in his fights with Mechagodzilla and King Kong. Now covered in an array of spikes as well, Godzilla has definitely upgraded his defense capabilities. Most notably, he has grown larger and sharper teeth as well. Conical and like a blade, these teeth can cut through even the toughest of Titan flesh. And with a bite force of 140,000 tons, approximately, it would theoretically be able to pulverize bone. The only reason I'm kind of against this statistic is mainly because I just don't think these kaijus have very strong head structures. I know some people are going to probably be a little bit annoyed by that statement, but the fact of the matter is, if you compare a T-Rex skull to a kaiju skull, there's a big difference. However, I digress. Probably one of the more interesting and new features on this Godzilla is his thagomizers, similar to what you would see on a Stegosaurus. At the end of Godzilla's tail, there is a row of dagger-like spikes that are part of Godzilla's radioactive charge, which means the King of the Monsters will have the capability to swing round, charge his dorsal plates, and blast a superheated pulse on impact. I believe this is being referred to as the atomic tail swipe, which is a pretty cool name, I must admit. It should also be mentioned that obviously with the sharp protrusions on the end of his tail, he'll be able to cut into other titans' flesh with ease. It should also be recognized how much stronger Godzilla's arms are here. Being bulkier and longer, Godzilla is able to support himself for longer periods of time, and can now walk on all fours to perform attacks like the atomic tail swipe. These will be far more useful in combat in comparison to his far more short and stocky arms from his last evolution. And something that stands out also about this Godzilla's arms are the fact that he, well, has something new to a MonsterVerse Godzilla design, and that is elbow blades, which I can't help but feel like they got some inspiration from -1 on those. Either way, these sharp sides can charge up with radiation, become superheated, and be fairly effective at both defense as well as melee attacks at close range. For example, when an enemy charges Godzilla, he will be able to simply just swing his arms in front of him and slice through the Titan's armor, which would make them incredibly useful for defensive and offensive purposes. Which means Godzilla is not only proficient in long-range attacks, but close range as well. In addition to his arms, his legs have also been slimmed down, meaning that he is much faster and agile than previous incarnations, which may be demonstrated in Hollow Earth battles, where he may use the tail slide ability to use his weight to stomp down on the enemy titans, subduing them so he can slash and bite at them. I'm sure a good chunk of my viewers already know where this attack comes from, which happens to be from the Showa era where Godzilla is fighting Megalon. And even Adam Wingard himself has instated that he has drawn a lot of inspiration from this film. So the tail slide ability being used is looking increasingly likely. Possibly the biggest overhaul in this new Godzilla design is obviously those pink dorsal plates, glowing a bright magenta due to the superheated gamma radiation. Apparently, it's been said that these plates are supposed to grow and shed much like deer antlers. And at this stage, I think it's pretty clear to see why. With a new, sharper design, these back spikes are more deadly than ever before, meaning he can utilize his dorsal slice to an even greater effect than ever before, taking the form of barbed thorns. If these plates were jabbed into an opponent monster, they would be extremely difficult to remove. So with a hypothetical scenario with Godzilla being in the Hollow Earth, he can leap into the air, thrust back, and pulverize his opponents with those new dorsal plates, whilst charging them up to superheated levels so he'll be able to use that more deadly atomic slice attack. It's also demonstrated in the trailer that these plates can slice through bridges like they are paper, meaning that these new pink plates are more deadly than ever. However, the main purpose of the plates is to hold and harness radiation, so he can utilize his deadly atomic breath. Appearing a bright pink, not only is this atomic breath hotter, but also more radioactive than ever before, meaning the area of impact will be hazardous to humans for years to come, much like the after effects of an atomic bomb. So if you see a magenta glow in the distance, it's probably best to vacate. This isn't the only ranged ability we'll be seeing in the film, seeing how that new trailer gave us a glimpse at Godzilla's new and improved nuclear pulse, stemming from the same ability as the thermal nuclear pulse in Godzilla King of the Monsters. However, this one is noticeably weaker and doesn't seem to have as much range, closer to the one that he used on the Muto Prime. However, it should be mentioned that it can be used without putting his own life at risk, due to its lower temperature. But it should be mentioned it is still a very deadly attack that can be used more frequently. And one thing that's been noticed is, well, obviously it's the previous evolution of Godzilla that's using this attack, so it's hard to say whether or not evolved Godzilla is still going to use this ability. Although in the trailer we do get a sneak peek of Godzilla glowing a brilliant pink, which may allude to Godzilla being able to use the same abilities as before, but perhaps even more deadly. With what we know so far, evolved Godzilla is set to be the most vicious, brutal, strong, hardened, powerful iteration that the King of the Monsters has ever been. Being able to move faster, hit stronger, bite harder, and blast atomic breath hotter than ever before, he's definitely going to be a formidable opponent against Scar King and Shimu, who are both fighting for the crown of Alpha Titan. But obviously, there's a lot the trailer hasn't shown. These are just some abilities that Godzilla is most likely to use during this upcoming film. And seeing how the Alpha Titan is the king of evolution, he may or may not pull something out of his scaly sleeve that we don't expect. So what new ability would you like to see Godzilla use? Let me know in the comments below. And this concludes the section where we talk about Godzilla's new powers. I'm definitely looking forward to doing some stop-motion animations with these new capabilities. It should be a lot of fun. And as always, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a kaiju and comment below what you think of the project, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. So at this point, I just gotta finish picking this monster's nose, and I will leave you all to the glamour shots. Enjoy! my name is Evan, and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters. And in this YouTube video today, the animation preparation is underway for the next big movie monster fight, I do say. The first order of business in this video today is some kaiju surgery, I do say, where Godzilla will be getting some work done for some more monster fighting fun. Then once all the surgeries are done, we'll have a little bit of video storyboarding fun. And while I restore my Godzilla today, we'll be talking about, well, the possibility of Godzilla the New Empire having a sequel today. So we'll start things off with the good news. Godzilla x Kong The New Empire dominated the Easter weekend box office. Within the first few days of its release, it became the third highest grossing film of this year so far. So arguably, I think it's pretty clear that monsters are the most popular that they've ever been. So if you wanted the Monsterverse to continue, it looks like we'll be more than likely heading off in that direction, due to these outstanding numbers in the box office weekend release. And there's already some good ideas out there floating around of what the sequel could look like to Godzilla x Kong The New Empire. And to be honest, as a hardcore G-Man fan myself, I'm pretty sure the rest of you Godzilla fans are going to love the direction that Adam Wingard is going to be taking with this new story, or the possibility with the, well, Godzilla x Kong sequel. So be sure to atomic blast away that like button, I do say, and subscribe if you're new here today, and share with your monster-loving friends and family. So hopefully this gets the algorithm all fired up so more Monsterverse fans can get the good news. Now, in regards to there being a trilogy of films for this series of Godzilla, this is what Adam Wingard had to say. The whole idea, if you've done 2 movies, maybe you should just go ahead and do a third, because clearly there's a trilogy in there. I definitely think there's more story to this, and I definitely have more story to tell. But it mainly depends on how well Godzilla x Kong The New Empire does, and how things kinda shape out. Now, I know that sounds like a very diplomatic answer, but the truth is, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I do have more stories to tell with these monsters, and I know where I would go with it. I would be very excited to be able to come back for another one if things worked out. And it appears that fate is on Adam's side here, because unless the New Empire just randomly stops making money, the movie's certainly going to do well enough to warrant a sequel, especially considering the fact that this was the cheapest Monsterverse movie to ever make, with a respectable blockbuster budget of approximately $135 million. And this is what Adam Wingard is thinking about his third Monsterverse movie, at least at this point. He says, I definitely have some ideas on where they could go. In the way that Kong is treated in this movie, if this movie is successful, I think the next movie will be the Godzilla version of what we did with this film, kinda pushing deeper into his story. But Kong's story is just beginning, even though I think he's coming to his own as the king of the Hollow Earth. He's not going to be a Scar King type of ruler. He is not a dictator of any kind. And to see how Kong will work with this group, and how he himself will be a leader, I think will be very interesting because I don't see it being all that straightforward. Now, I personally really love watching Kong as the lead in the Monsterverse, but I can also agree with some of the G-Man fans getting a little bit restless on, well, Godzilla having to take a bit of a side character role in this film. And it would be really nice to see Godzilla as the true star again in the next film. And it's not like Kong's gonna go anywhere if they do this. He is just going to be down in the Hollow Earth focusing on becoming a leader and ruling all these Kongs, hopefully not in a way like the Scar King, but I think we all know that Kong's a pretty nice guy. And that being said, I would definitely like to see more of the culture of the Kongs, and especially see the apes roaming free in the Hollow Earth now that the Scar King has passed away. I'm assuming the Kongs will have more access to the Hollow Earth now without fear of Godzilla interfering. It kinda seems like Godzilla's beef with the Kongs has settled down at this point now that the Scar King is dead. But what would Godzilla's story actually be? Well, sadly, it's a little too early to say. But at this point in the Monsterverse, we almost need to see Godzilla's story, his true purpose come to fruition, in this potential final Adam Wingard Monsterverse movie. I'm not saying he needs to die or anything, he just needs some sort of closure. Basically coming full circle with his story. Now, personally, I could probably go on just about forever watching Godzilla do his thing in the Monsterverse. But unfortunately, being realistic, I don't think we can continue this style of Showa-era films forever. Basically, before people start getting tired of it. So therefore, Godzilla needs to have his final big act, even bigger than his battle against Ghidorah. And whatever idea Adam Wingard has in his head, it's probably wild, wacky, and fun, and I'm definitely going to be interested to see what he comes up with. Now, with all that being said, we're still gonna have to wait and see to see how it all pans out, because it is still way too early to be talking about a sequel, even though it's probably looking like we're gonna get one. Either way, I figured you would all really enjoy to hear, well, Godzilla could be the main focus for the next Monsterverse movie. So now, if that does happen, let's get some ideas going here. What do you think Godzilla should do in his very own monster movie again? Let me know in the comments below. And if you find your creative juices are really flowing, be sure to, well, give a suggestion for this upcoming monster fight. I definitely got some fun out of, well, asking what we could possibly do in some of the live streams. So it'll be very interesting, and I'll give you a few hints as to what will be coming up in this monster fight here soon. Or perhaps leave a request. So I will do a quick update on the leaderboard. Right now, it is Team Doug is definitely in the win, followed by Kong and Scar King and Shin Godzilla. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video today while I operated on Godzilla, you could say, and talked about the Monsterverse today. So before I leave you to the beauty shots, as well as a little bit of foreshadowing in the upcoming animation, be sure to smash that like button if you do appreciate all the hard work and effort that goes into, well, making these characters, because, well, this guy is definitely not a small project. He is about 16 inches tall and 6 to 7 pounds of plasticine clay. So I just want you all to know I appreciate every single one of you, and you are the inspiration for this channel. So thank you for your support. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. And that's all from me. Till next time, take it easy.